police found their IDs, wallets, phones, Sherilyn's purse, and the family dog, who was still alive but malnourished. And the family dog, which was still alive but malnourished. They also found $32,000 in cash. Both Bobby and Sherilyn were on disability, and family had said they were struggling financially at the time. Where they got that much cash, or what they were planning to do with it, is unknown. Investigators suspected that drugs may have been involved. Sherilyn's handgun was also missing from the car. Bobby and Sherilyn were incredibly thin and emaciated when they went missing, leading to the theory that the couple were hooked on crystal meth. However, the police found no evidence of drug taking or illegal substances at the property or in the vehicle. Family members had not suspected it either, and the couple were known to be good parents. This theory also doesn't explain why they brought their daughter along with them, and it was impossible to tell if they had left voluntarily from the truck, or if they had been forced out by someone else. The case went cold until 4 years later, in November 2013. That day, 3 miles from where the family truck was found, a group of hunters stumbled upon partial skeletal remains of 2 adults and 1 child. Forensic testing proved they were the skeletons of the Jamison family, but due to decomposition, cause of death could not be determined. A security camera outside their home showed the Jamison family the night they left. In the video, the couple is seen going back and forth between the house and truck in a trance-like state, packing up their belongings. Prior to their disappearance, Bobby had gone to his pastor and claimed that his home was haunted, and saying that he had 2 to 4 ghosts in the roof. Both Bobby and Sherilyn were known to have extreme depression throughout their lives. They were very paranoid in the months before their disappearance, complaining to friends and family of ghostly visions and hauntings in the house. Sherilyn's mother believed that the Jamisons had somehow gotten involved with a cult and were murdered by violent members, but no evidence was found to support this theory. Police investigated another theory of a murder-suicide. They discovered an angry letter written from Sherilyn to Bobby that was 11 pages long. They speculated that Bobby had driven his whole family into the woods, murdered his wife, daughter, and then himself. But again, this can't be proven. The 3 bodies were found side by side, and Bobby's skull was found with a large, unexplained hole in it. Next is the case of Brian Shaffer. In 2006, Brian Shaffer was a 27-year-old medical student at Ohio State University. It was Friday and the beginning of spring break. At 9 p.m., Brian went out to celebrate with a friend, Clint Florence, and they bar hopped several places before ending up in a bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloon. Around midnight, a third friend, Meredith Reed, had also joined them. The bar was crowded and Brian was separated from his friends. Meredith and Clint repeatedly tried to call him. They assumed he had gone home. It is Police thought that Brian ditched Clint after they had an argument. Meredith and another witness gave their statement to police. This was something that happened regularly when they were out drinking. At the weekend, Brian's dad tried to call him, but he did not pick up. On Monday morning, he missed his flight to Miami that he and his girlfriend Alexis had scheduled long before. He was then reported missing. Police searched the 𝐦𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 saloon. At the time, the surrounding area had a high crime rate, so the bar had installed security cameras. Footage showed Brian, Clint and Meredith going up an escalator to the bar's main entrance at 1:15 a.m. Brian was seen again outside the bar around 1:55 a.m. He talks briefly with two young women, says goodbye, then he goes off camera in the direction of the bar as if to re-enter. That is the last time he is seen, and the cameras did not catch him leaving the bar. It could be the cameras missed him, or that he had changed his clothing in the bar. His walk home was known to be a dangerous area, and it's possible he was the victim of a crime opportunity. Those who had seen Brian that evening, including his father, were asked to take a lie detector test. He and Meredith passed, as did all the others. However, his friend Clint Florence refused to take the test. Many people close to Brian have criticized Clint for not being forthcoming. Brian's younger brother commented, "As soon as the detectives started getting involved, that's when Clint pretty much had no contact with anybody. I've always thought he definitely knows something and just won't come forward with it." After searching miles away around the 𝐦𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬 saloon in every direction, police began to consider other possibilities. Since Brian's mother had recently passed away, another theory was that he had left voluntarily to grieve on his own, and he would eventually return. But his disappearance has proved permanent, and his body has not been found. Next is Maura Murray. At 7:30 p.m. on February 9th, 2004, New Hampshire State Police were called to the scene of a single car accident where Maura Murray vanished after apparently losing control of her vehicle. When authorities arrived 10 minutes later, Maura was gone. 21-year-old Maura was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and had left campus that afternoon after packing her car and emailing professors she was taking a week off for a family emergency. However, no family emergency existed. Due to her preparations and no evidence of foul play, police had initially suggested she may have left voluntarily, although family and friends believe she was abducted. 2 days earlier, on Saturday, February 7th, Maura borrowed her father's Toyota Corolla and drove to the campus for a party. At 2:30 a.m., she drove back with the intention of returning his car to him. At 3:30 a.m., en route to his motel, she hit a guardrail. The police questioned her but did not file charges or do a sobriety test. She was driven to the motel and stayed in her father's room the rest of the night. The next day, she had searched online for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. She had made a phone call to inquire about renting of the disappearance, at 3:40 p.m., Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. At a nearby liquor store, she then purchased $40 worth of alcoholic beverages. CCTV showed she was alone. Maura then left Amherst. She checked her voicemail at 4:37 p.m., the last time she used her phone. Sometime after 7 p.m., a Woodsville, New Hampshire resident heard a loud thump outside of her house. Through the window she saw Maura's car up against the snowbank on Route 112. A bus driver stopped and noticed a young woman. She was not bleeding, but she was shivering and cold. She asked him not to call the police and said she'd already called AAA. However, AAA has no record of any such call. Knowing there was no cell phone reception in the area, the bus driver continued home and phoned the police. At 7:46 p.m., a police officer arrived at the scene. No one was inside or around the car. Missing from the car were Maura's purse and cell phone. Neither have been located or used since her disappearance. Between 8 to 8:30 p.m., a drunk driver saw a young person running eastbound on Route 112, about 5 miles east of where Maura's vehicle was discovered. This is the last credible sighting of Maura. One theory was that she had been disoriented with a head injury, causing her to run into the woods and possibly die from exposure or hypothermia. Others believe she encountered foul play, but there is no evidence. Next is the case of Sneha and Philip. 31-year-old Sneha Philip was a physician, last seen on September 10, 2001, the day before 9/11. She had the day off work and talked with her mother, telling her she was planning to go visit the windows on the World Restaurant in the World Trade Center. She then went out to do laundry and went to a Century 21 store where she was last seen on camera using her credit card to buy clothes and bed sheets. This security footage is the last known movement by Sneha. Her husband, Ron, came home around midnight, and his wife was not there. She had a history of staying out late, so he went to bed. The police discovered that at 4 a.m. he received a phone call on his cell phone and checked his voicemail, although he claims he doesn't remember doing so. He awoke at 6:30 a.m. for work. Sneha had not contacted him or returned home. 3 minutes before the first plane hit in the 9/11 attacks, a woman resembling Sneha was seen on Sneha and Ron's apartment building security camera. She walked towards the elevator, paused, then exited the building. Because of the lighting, it was never confirmed to be her, although Ron swears it was his wife. Her family and investigators believe that after the attack, she must have gone to the site to help, since she had a medical background. She was listed as a victim of the terrorist attacks for 2 years before her name was removed from the list. The NYPD had found many details about Sneha's life that suggested she may have been elsewhere or already deceased when the towers fell. It was discovered that Sneha had recently been let go by the hospital due to repeated tardiness and alcohol-related issues. Shortly after, she went out to a bar with other employees. reporting an incident. He offered to drop the charge if she withdrew the original complaint, but she refused and was held overnight. Sneha began spending nights out at gay and lesbian bars in the city, some known for their rough clientele. According to the police, she would sometimes leave with women she met at these bars. It was also found that Sneha's brother discovered her and his then-girlfriend having an affair, which her brother disputed. Sneha got another internship, but had already been suspended for similar problems. On the morning of September 10th, Sneha had been formally arraigned on her charge and pleaded not guilty. The police report says she and her husband Ron fought loudly at the courthouse afterwards about her problems and nights out. Sneha's family denies these accusations, and after appealing, they eventually got her name added back to the list of 9/11 victims. It's speculated that Sneha died in an unrelated incident, but which may not have been fully investigated due to 9/11. Next is the case of Kayelyn Louder. On September 26, 2014, at 9 p.m., Kayelyn Louder made a call to 911. During the call, she insisted there was a fight going on in her condo's clubhouse. The dispatcher asked if weapons were involved. She said there were guns. When police arrived, they found a wedding reception with no signs of an altercation. All guests also confirmed no fight ever took place. 1 hour later, Kayelyn dials 911 again, but hangs up before the call is answered. Police call her back. During the call, Kayelyn sounds confused and as though she is having trouble remembering her address. She mentions that her roommate thinks she is delusional and paranoid. At 8 a.m. the following day, Kayelyn makes her final 911 call before her disappearance. She claims there is an intruder in her home. During the call, she is extremely distressed, while her roommate insists no one could be in the house, as the bolt on the door is still locked. Police report they can hear Kayelyn yelling in the background of the call for the intruder to leave. When police arrived, they found no signs of a break-in or robbery. Her roommate says no one else was in the house. At 3:30 p.m., she left the apartment on foot, in a tank top, shorts, with no shoes, phone, or wallet, in the pouring rain. At 5:45, she is seen running. Security footage shows her carrying her dog back into the same location outside. She is very animated and is either talking to herself or her dog. This was her last known location. Later that day, Kayelyn was reported missing. 9 weeks later, her body is discovered by a team investigating a blocked pipe in the Jordan River, about 5 miles away from her condo. An autopsy came back inconclusive, but stated there were no drugs in her system and no foul play was involved. However, her family believe otherwise. The more sinister theory is backed up by the fact there was no water in her lungs, and her body did not have any scratches. If she had drifted down the shallow river, her body would very likely have indicative scraping. It was speculated that some parts of this river not even a small child would have been able to get through because of the shallowness and debris. Kayelyn's mother, who spoke to her the day she disappeared, says Kayelyn did not seem to be behaving out of the ordinary at all, and she had never shown signs of mental health issues before. Next is the case of Brandon Lawson. Brandon Lawson was a 26-year-old man from San Angelo, Texas. He was an oil field worker, a father of 4 children, and had a wife, Ledessa Lofton. August 8, 2013 was the last time Brandon was seen. He and Ledessa got into an argument because he had not returned home the previous night. This led to Brandon leaving the house around midnight with the intention of going to his father's house, a 3-hour drive away. 45 minutes later, Brandon called his brother, Kyle, to tell him he had run out of gas. According to Kyle, Brandon would have passed numerous gas stations near his home, yet he never stopped to fill up. Kyle spoke to Brandon numerous times after he ran out of gas. He admitted Brandon had been using methamphetamine. Brandon stated that people were after him. Kyle assured Brandon he was just tripping on the truck. At this point, Brandon flees. A passing truck driver called police to let them know of an abandoned truck on the side of the road. Kyle and his girlfriend Audrey arrived at the scene at 1 a.m., around the same time as the responding officer. Brandon had an old warrant out for drugs, so while speaking to the officer, Kyle did not say he had come to give his brother gas, or that his brother was in the area. However, Brandon himself calls 911, sounding somewhat incoherent, asking them to please hurry and send the cops because there were guys chasing him. In another phone call to Kyle and Audrey, he said he was 10 minutes up the road and was bleeding. The officer left after calling a truck to tow Brandon's vehicle. Meanwhile, Kyle and Audrey continued to search the area for Brandon until dawn, but they could not locate him. In 2022, a search party found clothing belonging to Brandon near his last known location. The Texas Rangers subsequently searched the area and found human remains. DNA results are still pending as of October, but the remains are expected to belong to Brandon. It is thought that he either succumbed to the elements or that someone really was chasing him. The rest of his 911 call is difficult to understand, but some believe what he was trying to say was that he had witnessed something between 2 men and a state trooper. He said something along the lines of, "One of the men saw me and started chasing me. He called up to me, but I fought him off. But now they are looking for me. I'm hiding in a dark field." Next is the case of Bryce Laspisa. In 2013, college sophomore Bryce Laspisa returned to school after spending the entire summer with his parents. Within 2 weeks, he disappeared without a trace. According to his roommate and his girlfriend Kim, his behavior had significantly changed, and they were both worried about him. Bryce had been mixing alcohol with an ADHD medicine that was not prescribed to him. After giving some of his possessions to his roommate and breaking up with his girlfriend, he began his drive home to California, where his parents lived. Soon his parents got a phone call from their insurance company stating that the car Bryce was driving requested roadside assistance. He was in a small town 3 hours said Bryce seemed to be fine. Karen asked Carlos, the serviceman, if she could speak with him, since Bryce had been declining her calls. Bryce tells his mom he is fine. She tells him to drive home. He agreed, and they were expecting him around 3 p.m. But by 5:30 p.m. he was not home and still not answering his phone. Karen then called the police. They found Bryce sitting in his car only 8 miles away from where the car was serviced. The police tell Bryce to call his mom. He is very reluctant, but he does. His mom asks what he's doing, but he doesn't have an answer, just that he is blowing off steam. She again tells him to come home. The police officer did a sobriety test and searched his car and confirmed Bryce seemed totally fine, coherent and alert. Karen calls Carlos, the serviceman, who offered to go check to see if Bryce was still there. He was. Bryce had now been in the town of Buttonwillow for 13 hours, sitting in his car. Eventually he started driving home and Carlos follows him for 30 minutes. Carlos calls Karen to say Bryce is on the freeway heading home. While he's driving on the freeway, Bryce is in contact with his parents a few times. At 2:30 a.m., he tells them he is going to pull over because he's too tired to drive. They agree and he pulls over on the next exit. Bryce pulls over near a cell tower with a 25-foot drop to a street below and then a large body of water. Bryce drove off the cliff. Car tracks show he had accelerated without braking. He crashed onto the road below. When help arrived, Bryce was gone. All of his belongings were still in the car, including his phone and wallet. 2 spots of his blood were located in the car, but not a large amount. Police dogs tracked his scent from the car to a gas station where the scent ends. Before the incident, Bryce had told his mum that he had a lot to talk to her about. People have theorized what it was that Bryce had to tell her, and that he was stalling for time in Buttonwillow. It was said that Bryce's parents were very controlling and emotionally abusive. It is thought that Bryce was working up the courage to tell them he was dropping out of this school they had chosen, and he would move elsewhere. But instead he decided to just crash their car and catch a ride to his chosen destination. It's possible the police had found him and respected his request for silence, which is why their final conclusion is that he is voluntarily missing. Another theory questions his mental state, which has been brought up several times in his life, likely as a result of his home life and his substance abuse. Him driving off the cliff was an attempted suicide. He may have suffered from head or internal injuries and eventually died from them. However, no body has been found. Next is Anthonette Cayedito. In 1986, 9-year-old Anthonette was described as a mature, level-headed girl who was very independent and often helped care for her younger sisters, 7-year-old Senita and 5-year-old Wendy. At the time of her disappearance, her parents were separated, and she and her sisters were living with her mother, Penny, in Gallup, New Mexico. On the night of April 5th, the girls stayed at home with a babysitter, while Penny went out with friends to a local bar. Penny returned home past was still awake when they heard a knock at the door sometime after 3 a.m. They ignored it at first, but when the visitor knocked again, Anthonette got up to see who it was. Zenita said the man identified himself as Uncle Joe, Penny's brother-in-law. He told Anthonette, "Hurry, we're cold out here, open the door." Zenita recalled hearing a woman's voice as well, but she never got out of bed to see who it was and quickly fell asleep. In another version, Zenita and Penny were asleep, but 5-year-old Wendy was awake and followed Anthonette to the front door. When Anthonette opened the door, 2 men snatched her, forced her into a vehicle and drove away. Wendy did not tell anyone this until she was 10, because her mother was distraught and she was scared she would get into trouble. A neighbor told police they saw a brown truck with New Mexico plates parked in front of the Cayedito home between 6:30 and 7 a.m. They watched the man walk through the front door, but said it wasn't unusual to see visitors' cars at the house at all times of the day. This man remains unidentified. When Penny got up at 7 a.m., she assumed her daughter went to look for a neighbor's lost dog. When she realized no one had seen her all morning, she called the police at 11 a.m. Detectives tracked down the real Uncle Joe, who was quickly dismissed as a suspect. 1 year later, police received a disturbing 911 call from a young girl claiming to be Anthonette. She says, "I'm Anthonette Cayedito. I'm in Albuquerque." The dispatcher says, "Okay, whereabouts in Albuquerque?" A male voice is then heard saying, "Who said you could use the phone?" The girl screams and there is a sound of a struggle. Penny listened to the recording and believed the voice on the tape was her daughter. 3 years after the 911 call, a diner waitress in Carson City, Nevada, served an unkempt couple traveling with a girl who resembled Anthonette. The girl had deliberately dropped her fork on the floor, then squeezed the waitress's hand when she returned it to her. When the couple left, the waitress found a note on a napkin that said, "Help me, call police." None of the 3 have ever been identified, and it's not known whether this girl was Anthonette. Detectives suspected that some family members, particularly her mother, Penny, knew more than they were willing to admit. Detectives stated that Penny did not reveal that a number of people had been in and out of the house the night of Anthonette's disappearance, along with other undisclosed details that the family didn't admit until the detectives found that information on their own. Next is the case of Brandon Swanson. Brandon Swanson was 19 years old and living in Marshall, Minnesota, when he disappeared in May 2008. He was returning from a party around midnight when he crashed his car in a ditch and called his parents for help at 2 a.m. Brandon told his parents that he wasn't injured and stayed on the phone with them for an hour while they attempted to find him. At 3 a.m., suddenly Brandon exclaimed, "Oh shit," and that was the last thing that was heard from him. His mother, Annette, said they continued calling out his name but they could not find him. Brandon was never found, but his car was located the following day, 25 miles from where he said, indicating he was lost and had given his parents the wrong location. Brandon had very poor eyesight, so if he had dropped his phone, he may not have been able to find it in the dark, especially since he had been drinking, although not excessively. The main theory seems to be that he fell into a nearby river and drowned. However, the police dogs smelled his scent on both sides of the river, suggesting he crossed over. Another theory was that he made it out of the cold river and died of hypothermia, as temperatures were around 40 degrees that night. The dogs also picked up a trace of his scent on a private farm and his machinery, but the farmer would not allow a search. This led to theories that the farmer had disposed of his body, or that Brandon was accidentally run over by farm machinery. Next is Diane Augat. Diane Louise Augat was 40 years old when she disappeared in 1998 from Odessa, Florida. On April 10th, around 11 a.m., Diane was seen leaving her home. She did not return later that evening. The following day, on the 11th, a witness reported seeing Diane walking on Route 19 in Hudson, Florida. Diane was diagnosed with bipolar, but did not take her medication on a regular basis. Diane had gotten divorced early in the 90s, and her 3 children were taken from her custody in 1988. With increasing stress, along with her disorder and depression, Diane began committing various minor offenses that led to her arrest multiple times. Diane had not taken her medication on the day of her disappearance, so her mother and the police considered it to be an episode of her bipolar. Days later, on April 13th, Diane's mother received a missed call from her daughter. According to Diane's mother, on the answering machine, she heard the words, "Help, help, let me out." She also heard in the background there seemed to be scuffling taking place, as if somebody was trying to take the phone away from her. Just before the call ended, Diane said, "Hey, give me that." And suddenly the line went dead. The caller ID pinpointed the possible location of where this call took place, which came from a business called Starlight around the Odessa area. Panicking, Diane's mother tried to call the business, but nobody answered. It's not known exactly what this business was, but some believe it to have been either a strip club or a motel. On April 15th, 2 days following this phone call, a discovery was made. Around the area of the sighting of Diane on Route 19, the severed tip of Diane's right middle finger with the nail was found. 2 weeks later, at a nearby convenience store, a bag was found inside a freezer. Inside were some clothes that were neatly folded. In the year 2000, 2 years after the first bag was found, the girlfriend of Diane's brother found another bag in Pasco, Florida, at a Circle K convenience store. It was a Ziploc bag that had the name Diane written on it with a permanent marker. Inside, there was a lipstick, eyeliner, and perfume. Diane's mother told investigators these items were something she would have used, but there hasn't been any confirmation whether these was later apprehended and charged with murdering a man in 2001. Gary is considered to be a possible suspect in Diane's case, but there hasn't been any solid evidence. To this day, there have been no promising leads, and Diane is nowhere to be found. Next was Susan Walsh. Susan's case is one that I have fully covered in a previous video. It is a tragic, unsolved mystery with a lot of theories, but no real evidence. If you would like to watch that, the link will be in the description. The next case is Zigmund Adamski. Zigmund Adamski was a 56-year-old Polish miner living in West Yorkshire, England. On June 6, 1980, he strangely disappeared from his home after leaving to go buy some potatoes. His body was found 5 days later, lying face up on top of a large stack of anthracite coal in Todmorden, a town about an hour drive away in which he had no connection. His clothes were in good condition, although the shirt was removed. He had not attended any hospitals in the missing 5 days, and had only been on the coal a few hours before he was found. It appeared that he had been eating well, he had not slept rough, and that no struggle had taken place. It was also noted that only 1 day's worth of beard growth had taken place, suggesting he had been able to shave. The post-mortem was carried out at 9:15 p.m. at the Royal Halifax Infirmary. The pathologist concluded that Zigmund's death took place between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. that same day. There was a burn on his neck that had been there 2 days before his death. It had a peculiar ointment applied onto it. There was some deliberation over the cause of his death, and it was not registered until the autumn of that year. It was eventually determined to be a heart attack. The cause of the mysterious burns, the whereabouts of Zigmund in his final 5 days, as well as the unidentified green substance on his skin, were never determined. Because of these strange findings, many people believe this was an